Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into another episode of the Money Insights Podcast, the alternative wealth-building podcast for high-income earners. My name's Christian Allen. Here with me, as always, Rodney the Pod Zabriskie. Rod, what is up?
Hey, friend? I'm doing great. I'm enjoying maybe the last warm day of the year, but I'm enjoying it. It's good.
Warm is a little bit strong, Rod. When I was out there, it was about 42 degrees, but it was sunny. So, it's supposed to be a high of like 50. Rod, no one cares about the weather. Nobody cares about the weather.
It just struck me. I was like, man. Anyway, okay, I like the fall, but
I appreciate the authenticity, but nobody cares about the weather. Rod, what they do care about, at least I hope, is they care about the topic for today's podcast episode. We're calling today's title From High Paid to High Impact, the Entrepreneur's Advantage.
Yep.
Whew, there's a lot there, man. We've got a lot to unpack.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. We're going to jump right into it, Rod. And what I did is I built out a list of a bunch of people who have done like kind of unique, successful, like game-changing things, whether like in the world or in their industry. But again, people that had a high impact as they built their businesses.
Yeah.
So good news is there is a lot of people today. I genuinely believe today, Rod, this is the best time to be a business owner, or the best time to be an entrepreneur. That's probably the better way to say it. Like, because opportunity is just like everywhere. You can go in so many directions and be an entrepreneur, and there's just so many advantages to it. Agreed. And that's what we're going to get into today. So, Rod, here's the question. Where do you want to start?
Well, maybe we can start with the premise. Like, how did we come up with the title, High Paid to High Impact?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you how, Rod. It's because we talked to a bunch of people who are high paid, and many of them are already high impact. But the reality is that virtually everybody we talk to and meet with aspires to create significant impact in the world. That's usually the driving force. Like, money is oftentimes just like the way we keep track. It's the score, right? But at the end of the day, most people that we talk to are more interested, especially as you get to a place where you're like comfortable with money. You know, maybe you're to this place where it's not like a worry, you're not concerned about running out of money or whatever. When you get to that place, most people are still very driven. And my experience is it's not because they're just trying to get as much money as they possibly can. Money ends up being more of a means to an end. So, well, the reason I thought of this concept or just kind of this topic was because these are the people we're talking to, and there is a huge opportunity for all of us to create a larger impact. And so from that standpoint, it's about the aspirational opportunities that exist today. But in addition to that, Rod, there's also a very practical advantage to being an entrepreneur, right? Just a very practical advantage from a wealth building perspective. We're going to talk about with the things we hammer on all the time, the tax benefits and just like there's savings and opportunities that end up being there that the traditional W-2 or the W-2 individual doesn't get. But we're also going to talk about how you can become that person relatively easily.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Anyway, so that was like my rant on unpacking the title. What do you think?
Brilliant. Well, I agree with you. I was at an event last week, and it was all for high net worth people and legacy and other things like that. That often when I think about legacy, I think more of like for family, right? My direct people that I know and love, and I'm kind of passing wealth to them or culture to them or whatever it might be. But it was as much, this particular event was as much about impact that we can have on, just people out there who are having a rough time, right? So, human trafficking and orphans in Guatemala. There were a few different like specific organizations that we heard about, learned about, and the impact that these people are having on them. And we're not going to get as much into that part of it today. We're focused more on the entrepreneurial side. But I guess what I was just doing is just agreeing with you that there's this desire, there's this passion for so many of the people that we get to work with every day to do more, to have a higher impact in the world than just being there, earning a keep and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's an important addition. I appreciate you bringing it up. And I think the two oftentimes go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
Like success is oftentimes an avenue to create more, to build impact, right? So like somebody, I think of people who oftentimes maybe they start with the aspiration to grow like generational wealth, or even just like create financial independence.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they get there, it becomes this shift that's maybe it is to greater success, but oftentimes it's for a purpose, and that purpose being to impact maybe lives, right? Like in a very practical, meaningful way, whether it's, the kind of work you were talking, humanitarian work, giving to charitable, like all of those things can be, ways to have a real impact. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. We don't want to leave that behind in our discussion, even though most of the people we're going to throw out today are well-known people that just have done unique things to kind of, that were game changers. We'll call it that.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rod, I have a list of 25. We're going to go through each one of them one by one, line by line, 10 to 12 minutes on each one. Just kidding, Rod. Why don't we pick out just a few that we like? You go first.
Okay, first, I'm going to pick out Damon John. Okay, he made the list.
Love Damon.
And I talk a lot about this. I love Shark Tank. I watched all the time. I watched the reruns.
Did I introduce you to Shark Tank?
You actually did. Yeah.
I feel like I did, but you've surpassed me in fandom without question.
Yeah, so here's what everyone should know. I'm not a big like connoisseur of TV and all of the different things that are going on there. But Christian is. So he's moved on to greener pastures. He, other shows that he enjoys. And I just got like enamored with this one.
Like, and good news is they've had like 15 seasons. So they just keep plugging. Is it still creating new ones?
They are still creating new ones, and they'll continue to play all the reruns, sometimes 3 and 4 a night. So
you're ready to roll, man.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I first learned about Damon John. I mean, I have known who he was otherwise, but his cool thing. So he started out, he had the FUBU fashion line and made it big there. And then with kind of what he's doing with Shark Tank and other things, investing in other people and making what they're doing better as well. So, and I'll say this too. So one of the reasons why I picked him out is it's not because for him, it isn't just about the money. It isn't just about, continuing to build his empire or whatever. He is very specifically trying to make things better. So for example, a common line for him is if he hears a pitch and he just doesn't feel like he can add value, he's not going to invest just for the sake of investing. Even if he thinks it's a great idea, he thinks that they're going cool places. If he doesn't feel like he can genuinely create a better place for them, better path for them, then he just doesn't get involved with it, because he wants to put his passion behind those things where he does feel like he can make a difference.
Yeah, I love Damon John, man. He's a fun one. Rod, I'm going to let you keep going. Who's your next one?
Okay. Well, the other one, I'll kind of keep rolling with. So Richard Branson is the second one.
Richard Branson, yes.
Picked out. And here again, he's not a regular on Shark Tank, but he has come on a few times as a guest shark on Shark Tank. And so that's kind of how I got to know him. I won't pretend to be, to know much about him, but the reason I picked him out is because he's just an out of the box thinker. The things that he has become successful with in music industry and airlines, even kind of moving towards space travel. He is not someone who's just going to take whatever has been done or tradition or or limitations that someone else says are his. He just ignores all of those things. He's going to go do cool things and think outside the box. So that's why I picked out him.
Okay, Rod, I want to give a shout out to my man, Ben Silberman.
Okay.
Ben Silberman, he created Pinterest. And you think, well, and I have no idea about anything about Ben Silberman other than that he created Pinterest. But Pinterest has been an incredibly valuable tool for me recently. I, as Heather and I have started to build our house, like we have to like share pictures and stuff. And so like in the last like couple months, this is kind of embarrassing. I've never done anything with Pinterest, right? Up until like a couple months ago. And man, I'm digging Pinterest. It's throwing out good ideas to me all the time. So shout out to Ben Silberman. He is making my house building experience just a little bit better. And I appreciate that.
That's great. Yeah. I'm not sure what you call people who get on Pinterest. I'm not a pinner.
I don't
know if that's what you call them.
You don't. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any pinners.
Okay.
Rod.
But I know a lot of people around me love it as well. Like especially my daughter Julianne, I'm thinking of. Like she loves because she's like a creative. Man. She's always looking for cool things to do, whether it's cooking in the kitchen or little crafts or things that she loves to do. And she loves it. She always finds
Pinterest
awesome
is the place. It's a place, good place to go for that kind of thing. So shout out to our man, Ben. Okay, Rod, who's your next one?
Okay, next one I'm going to say Brian Chesky, co-founder of Airbnb. And
okay.
I'll be honest, I didn't know his name before he made the list because of Airbnb. So, but I picked him because this is an example of a business that has changed the whole travel industry.
Yeah, it's totally pretty cool, right?
Yep. In good ways for the consumer.
Like it created like investor opportunities too. I mean, think about like that's where short-term rentals came about, right? Mm-hmm. So now it's funny. Airbnb is a big company that basically does that. But now as an individual, you can get involved and do like just proving out the concept other than giving the consumers like people who want to actually stay in an Airbnb. Obviously that was an opportunity, but like it's kind of next level in the sense that it also formulated basically a way for people to invest and make money.
Yep.
On it again for an average individual. Anyway, I really like the short-term rental game. I think I like the efficiency of it. It's like unique in that you can create a lot more profit with less properties. And of course, I mean, there's obviously there's good and bad to it, but that's not what we're here to talk about right now.
Yeah, and one last thing on that is that it's a business that evolved, and there's probably still some element of it. Like I think the starting point was, hey, if you have an extra bedroom and you want to make it available for someone to come and stay, then great. I think that part of it didn't end up to be as practical as ultimately where it is now, where you have separate living quarters, so to speak. So you could subdivide your house or a house into multiple entrances and whatnot. So anyway, that's ultimately where it is now, and where I think it was going to see the best success. But I think that's another point too. Having a good idea and getting started, even if it's not the best idea in the long run, but then being creative and willing to adjust and reinvent the business. Well, this is an example where they have had to do that and been really successful because of it.
Rod, I believe that I am about to share the most impactful person on this list.
Okay. All right. Let's see it.
You're going to have to see if you can quibble with me on it. But from my perspective, as I've been thinking about this, and no, it's not Elon Musk and it's not Jeff Bezos and it's not even Larry Page and Sergey Brin. It is, however, Tim Berners-Lee.
Okay.
Creator of the World Wide Web. What do you think? Does that,
is
there anybody that's like in the last century? I don't know how long, but like who's had more of an impact on the world over the last 50 years than that?
That's a great point. A lot of the people on this list have been able to do what they've been able to do because of the World Wide Web.
Rod, that's why we're able to do what we do. I think
Yeah.
about how painful a lot of businesses used to be,
Yeah.
right? Just like either, pushing things through the mail and
Mhm.
man, I think
Fax.
about that, Rod. You put things, you push things through the mail, Rod, and then I can just imagine that a signature gets missed, and then that means like, oh, that's a week. It's
Yeah.
another.
Oh yeah.
It's just crazy. I marvel that in the past, thinking about how much exists in there, that anybody was able to get business done before the World Wide Web. So anyway, my man Tim Berners-Lee, World Wide Web, most impactful dude on this list.
Okay. I mean,
Okay,
hard to
that's okay
hard
though.
to argue against that one.
Yeah, I think it is, but I didn't want to steal your thunder, Rod. So that doesn't mean that there's not some really cool people in here. Who else do you want to hit on before we move on?
Okay, the last one I want to hit on is Travis Kalanick, co-founder of Uber, and this is going to be kind of piggybacking on what I did with Airbnb, but there's no question that Uber has just completely changed the transportation industry. Like, when's the last time you saw a cab?
Well, I mean, only when we go into the bigger cities.
And you do still see them
when you see
there.
cabs.
You still see them
But
at the
if you're
airports,
in,
whatever.
But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
That's about it. There's definitely a lot less cabs going on.
Yep.
And everywhere. And Rod, in Utah, we rarely saw cabs anyway. Let's be real.
It was a rarity.
But if you go to, but even still, if you're going to like these bigger cities, generally, like there's more Uber, Lyft, that kind of stuff going on than a lot more of that going on than people riding cabs.
Yeah, cabs or even like shuttle services or all that kind of thing. So
yeah, it's pretty wild. Okay, these are fun ones. Let's kind of move along here, Rod. I want to talk about strategies for entering into the entrepreneur world.
Yeah.
So obviously, if we're talking about the advantages, and we're going to get to some of those here in just a few minutes, you have to feel like you can get there. A lot of the people who we work with, a lot of people who will listen to the show are already in the business space, but there's also a lot of people who are high paid professionals in a traditional job, right?
Yep.
Here's the good news. It is not that difficult to get into the business world. And that's one of the messages I want to make really clear here is that you're not like out of luck if you're a W2. If you're making $500,000 or $600,000 in your W2 job, guess what? You probably have some cash that you can go and create a business, even if that means investing in real estate, as an example.
Sure.
I say even like that's a great way to start a legitimate business, right? Anyway, we're going to get into that more in a second, but Rod, why don't you take us through a few of the ways that we recommend, or like the people should be thinking about if they're wanting to move from the space that they're in, say they're in the W2 space, they want to get more into that entrepreneurship world. Where do they start?
Yeah, well, I think it wouldn't be a shocker to find out that from a lot of these high income people that they are approached by others who have an idea or have a business that they're starting or have started, and they need capital, right? So obviously a startup needs capital in most cases. And then you have situations where business has been started, they've kind of proved the concept, and now they just need to pour fuel on the fire, but they need capital in order to do it. And so they often will approach others about doing that. And if you haven't been approached, there are cool like mastermind groups and local kind of regional groups that will organize an opportunity for you to be pitched by people if this is something that is of interest to you. So that, kind of like I was talking about Dave and John, right? Shark Tank is obviously a well, very visible version of that, but there are a lot of different forms of that out there for anyone who's interested in investing in others. So that is one way that anyone can, W2, even if you're a business owner now, but you want to kind of, spread things out a little bit, that can be a great way to do it.
Okay. Investing in startups, Rod. That is a good way to go.
Yep.
I think the challenge, like you said, that you kind of started to address there, is where do I find people who are looking for money, right? And so that's where you've got to get involved in groups and things like that. It's not typical that someone's just going to, randomly walk up to you and ask for a couple $100,000 in for 20% of their company, right?
Yeah.
But without question, if you're out there looking for those kinds of opportunities, you can get them. And then of course, there's private equity deals and things like that. But okay, so the first place, investing in startups. A great way to do it, Rod, is to buy an existing business that's already like up and running, cash flowing, producing. That I think is an underrated opportunity in today's market. I was doing some research recently, and the numbers suggest that there is going to be and is a massive amount of people in that baby boomer generation who own businesses who are needing and wanting to sell, many of which aren't going to be able to sell.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is there's a dearth of people to purchase these businesses, which means there's a really great opportunity to make deals. Again, the challenge is like figuring out who and where those opportunities lie. But that's where getting involved in various groups and people like us can help kind of give people ideas on where to go. But I think that's just an underrated opportunity, something that I'm personally interested in looking at more. And I think it will be a really like a unique opportunity for people, specifically high paid individuals who want to get into the entrepreneur space, to get in there on a really favorable and unique basis.
Yeah. And I think on our show previously, we've focused on different opportunities to do that, especially in franchising, right?
Yeah. Things that franchising is a really good way to do it. And if you're already a specialist, like you might even be thinking, so many of you listening to this are in the medical space, like, well, obviously that would be a great way to do, is to buy an existing practice, especially if you can find it for, a really good deal.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
And we've worked with people recently who have done really well on the selling side, right? They've had an opportunity to sell their business and they've done, really well from it. So it's a powerful way to get into the entrepreneur space.
Yeah, for sure. And even if it's not a franchise, when you're buying that business, you're buying into existing systems and processes and assets and whatnot that are already in place doing that. And so you're obviously doing your due diligence to make sure that it is functioning well and that that's something you can plug into and run with, but great way to do it.
Okay, Rod, the next one on our list is creating a side hustle, which while maintaining a full-time job. That's what a side hustle is, right? Weird. But the one that comes to my mind, again, because I've spent probably way too much time listening to like physician finance related podcasts, mostly because I'm like a little disgusted by what I hear and I just like gets me fired up. But sometimes I get some good nuggets out of it too. But I think of this locums tenens things where physicians will just like fill in for temporary places and they can get paid really well. And it can be like a really like unique and good side hustle. There's apparently a big need for it. And I've heard of a lot of physicians who do that. So and the reason I bring it up is because some people listening like may not realize that just by doing that, they've created a business. When you create 1099 income, you are an entrepreneur. You're creating business income, which by the way, starts to bring on some of the potential tax optimization strategies that we often talk about.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's why I was thinking about that. But Rod, what do you think of when you think of side hustles?
Well, we see a whole variety of different things. Obviously, in a lot of cases, it is directly related. So, a physician who also does some in-home visits on the side, right? Working for that kind of thing.
I have a person I'm thinking of, Rod. I probably could shout him out. I'll just say his first name, John. So our man John, he's a great example of this. This is kind of funny though, because he's a full-time physician. And he has what I'm going to put in air quotes as a side hustle. He just happens to make like 10 to 15, 20 times more money in his side hustle than he does in his full-time job working with clients
Yeah.
or working with patients.
Yeah.
But it's really a cool idea because like he's someone that's having an impact, and like he loves what he does, so
Yep.
he works it, you know, he continues to do it while at the same time having an impact, and you know, being able to fulfill that entrepreneur part of him as he goes. So kind of, you know, another unique situation. So the side hustle doesn't have to be, and oftentimes it like starts as the where I'm making less of my money,
Mhm.
but oftentimes it becomes more. And what we see frequently is that people start to look and they're like, ah, well, my side hustle, like I'm spending 10% of my time, but making 50% as much as I do here. And that could be just investing, right?
Yeah.
And then over time, like it's gives you an opportunity to phase into full-time entrepreneurship if that's your desire. You can take it any direction you want. That's kind of the nice thing about it.
Yeah, and that side hustle can include some of the things we talked about earlier in terms of acquiring an existing business or a franchise. We will tell you that getting into that kind of situation, if you want it to be 100% passive, you're probably fooling yourself. It's not going to be 100% passive, but it can be a side hustle, right? You can continue doing the majority of your spending the majority of your time doing what you do, and add this on. You're spending some time on it, plan on it, but can do really well with it.
I would say the majority of the people that we meet with fit into the camp of investing in real estate along with whatever their full-time job is.
Yeah.
And I say that like full-time job could be running the business, like running a practice or something like that, or it could be a surgeon or something like that. But um, that's a really great way to get a lot of the advantages that come with being an entrepreneur. So again, if you're out there and you're thinking like, okay, I know they keep talking about how it makes sense to be an entrepreneur, but how do I do that?
Mhm.
All you do is you start investing, you create a business, and maybe talk through that, Rod. When we talk about that, how does starting to invest in real estate suddenly create a business for somebody?
Yeah, great question. So I would say number one, when you're owning or when you're investing in real estate, you're usually creating LLCs or other structure around it, which by its implication is a business.
Yep.
And you're starting to create revenue. You have expenses. Well, what's the definition of a business, right? It's a place that's generating revenue. And so then as you start to have those expenses and you're planning things in the right way, then you can start to bring in some of your regular expenses. So for example, if you have a piece of property, and let's just say you're becoming the landlord on it. Not everybody wants to do that, but let's just say you are, and uh you need a transportation when you're going to go over and be checking out the property. Well, now you can buy your car through your business, right? It's a necessary expense in order to allow you to facilitate you doing what you need to do there. And that's just one example. There could be many others. But the point is that all of a sudden these things, if you're spending it inside of your business, it's a tax deductible expense. Whereas prior to that, if you just had your W-2 income and didn't have this opportunity to have taxable deductible expenses, it completely changes things for you. So that's an example.
It's a good example too, Rod. I think it's a really good example. Okay, I want to talk about like managing risk. Um, and basically what I mean by that is I want to emphasize that that while we're suggesting that it's if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not investing, if you're not a business owner, just you should be. You just need to be.
Mhm.
Period. Okay. End of story. However, what we're not saying is that you just go be crazy about it, right? Like we're
Yeah.
not saying, hey, go, you know, check out a business listing page and click on one and be like, that's the one, right? Like
Mhm.
we're not suggesting that. You certainly have to manage risk and be thoughtful and smart about it. And that starts, Rod, with a solid foundation. And when we say foundation, what we mean is a financial foundation, right?
Yeah.
So maybe what are some of the things that people should have in place from a financial perspective before they even consider, you know, trying to like follow their entrepreneurial pursuits?
Yeah. Well, I would say, uh, Well, capital is an obvious one, but beyond the capital that you think you need to start the business, you need backup capital, right?
And whatever
So
you think you need, just like double it
at least,
as you're
yes.
getting started, maybe
Yep.
triple it, right?
Yep. Yep. So, and that can include line of credit or things like that, right? Like there could be situations where using leverage makes sense when you're getting in, but again, be very smart about that. Don't go crazy. Don't put undue risk on the rest of your world that's going really well. And so hand in hand with that, go in with emergency fund. So whatever you think you need for your regular living expenses as an emergency fund, you need to keep that and add to it because you're going to need now cash reserves, emergency fund as it relates to your business so that you have payroll that needs to be paid out. You're waiting for a check to come in. The check hasn't come in. You need cash. You need to have reserves to help you do that at a different level as a business owner than just as an individual.
Okay. Backup cash is critical. And like
Yep.
we say, more than what you think you need, super critical. It's also, Rod, really important to have some competency around how you're actually going to track what's happening within the business, some sort of
Yeah.
process, right? So what I think about is like, just let's say that I'm investing in real estate and I'm wanting to be a serious investor. I'm wanting to create a business, but I'm starting with I'm starting with like a local property where I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if you're if you're a high paid professional, like I probably wouldn't recommend doing it that way. I'd probably go the passive route, getting the same benefits without all the work. But let's just say you're like, I really want to I want to go out there, boots on the ground. Well, it's wise to do a little bit of research, get a little education beforehand so that you know the flow of what's going to happen and how you're going to do it. So again, and you've got to know how to manage like the cash flow of the
Mm-hmm.
business in
Mm-hmm.
and out, and again, specifically know what you're going to use to track and make sure that you're staying in a solid place, and just not getting out over your skis.
Yeah. And I would say for a lot of people who maybe don't have those skills or that knowledge base, partnering with someone can be valuable. And I say can because partnerships are always tricky, right? Number one, you want to make sure that you have complementary skills that you're bringing to the table so that everyone, is bringing that value. But at the same time, uh, sometimes they don't work out, right? Sometimes there are
Yeah, it's
tricky things
tricky.
in there. So you have to make sure that in this whole kind of managing risk space, it can be valuable to have partners, but go in eyes wide open, very transparent and clear with each other about what expectations are and what's going to happen, how this partnership's going to work, so that there aren't any just weird things that trip you up along the way.
Okay, Rod, I don't want to go too long on this one. So we're going to move to tax optimization. This
Okay.
is a big one because so much of getting ahead in the investment world, particularly for high paid individuals, is learning how to manage and optimize, mitigate, whatever you want to say, create a better tax situation than you otherwise would. What are some of the benefits that we get by investing in a bit, or by being a business owner, by being an entrepreneur? Because that's, I, after all, what we're talking about today,
Yeah.
right? This
Yeah.
is
And
the entrepreneur's advantage.
yep. So I hit on it a little bit earlier. I kind of hinted towards it is these deductions that you can now take. And for some people, depending on how you work your job, it can even be as simple as taking your whatever you're doing currently as a W-2 and maybe even switching it out as a 1099. And again, that doesn't work in all situations. If you have a manager and they're always telling you what to do, then what needs to be done, then W-2 is where you need to stay. But if not, and you're mostly working independent, then a 1099 could be it. And as soon as you become a 1099, now you can all of a sudden start putting on your tax return, called the Schedule C, uh, expenses that you are spending, and you're probably spending them now, but because it's related to that business, now all of a sudden those can be deductible. So having deductions is one big piece. The second one is there are a lot of tax related strategies that are only available to business owners. And some of these are related to like retirement plans. But there are a lot of other things that aren't directly retirement plan related, like
the restricted property trust is an example.
yes. Yeah, where you're deferring, you're taking income, but you're getting a deduction on it, deferring some of that because your income's going to come later. You can get some tax benefits for that, but only if you're a business owner, not if you're W-2.
And like you said, of course, there's like the traditional things that people think about, defined benefit plans, which again, we always talk about as having a place in the right situation.
Yeah.
But deductions is the biggest thing, right? That's one word, but deductions is incredibly broad.
Mhm.
And so what you'll find is that with a little bit of strategy, that can oftentimes be more broad than what you probably think. And
Yeah.
then, of course, by doing that, you're still getting value out of the money without having to pay taxes on every dollar of it. And well, okay, but we won't get into it more. Okay, Rod, is there anything else on the tax side of it that you want to hit on?
Maybe one last thing, and that is one of the things that a lot of people run into with their business or their real estate as a business is that they want to take the expenses, the losses that they have on that side and count it against their working income. And that doesn't cross over except in, certain exceptions like a real estate professional status. However, if you have your side hustle, if you have some of these things that is creating income and it falls into that passive side, now you can take passive losses from your real estate and count that against passive income from the side hustle. Our friend John, right, that you mentioned earlier, is a good example of that. Because of the way the business is structured, that comes through as passive income. And now he can count passive losses against that. That's one of the biggest things that we see people, bump into a lot is they get excited about investing in real estate. They get this, depreciation, bonus depreciation, all these things. And then they're like, okay, great. Now can't that count against my income? Well, no, it can't because that's active versus passive. So work with as you're setting up your business. If you can set it up and it lands on the passive side, it adds additional layers of benefit for you.
Rod, I want to close this thing with some practical advice for anybody aspiring to become an entrepreneur. Okay. So we're going to take this thing step by step. Number one, you've got to do the research up front. You've got to have the education. It usually comes from a desire. The good news is for most people, that's not a hard thing, right? When you're going to place your money, especially when you're going to be involved with it, it's usually pretty easy to like get excited and want to learn and become educated. But that's the first step. You've got to become educated and get some background for what it is that you're going to be doing. That may seem obvious, but just make sure you do it. The second thing is that you've got to have a business plan.
Yep.
Man, I love creating business plans. Right? Just kidding. My favorite business plan ever was the one-page business plan.
Yeah.
That's my style, right? You can knock it out quickly. You get all the high-level points, but like still creates clarity. So if you're someone like me that struggles to like sit down and create a 5-page document, you don't have to. It can be relatively simple, but just having that clarity of thought, having it down on paper in front of you makes a big difference. No one has it on paper anymore, Rob. That was a silly comment. But if having it in front of you makes a big difference. That's the second thing. Okay, Rod, give us the third thing. This is one of your favorite things.
Well, yeah, third thing is the team, right? And that could include
assemble the team.
Yeah, and it can include the people who are actually on the ground doing the work and like mentors, other people that you lean on, rely on that aren't necessarily working in the business, but that are as valuable or more valuable in the success of the business. So just having the right people around you, the right people on the right seats on the bus.
Including the Money Insights team. Okay, next, Rod, you've got to figure out how you're going to pay for whatever you're doing. Again, that's pretty obvious if you're investing in real estate, but if I'm purchasing a business, I may not be intending to just purchase it in cash, right?
Yep.
It may be a combination of a down payment, most likely the combination of a down payment and some sort of financing structure, whether it's seller financing, whether it's bank financing. Any way you shake it, though, you've got to have financing. Hard to become a business owner, Rod, really in any way without at least a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? I mean, I guess you could get a 1099 gig and that doesn't cost anything, and then you can start creating money. But for the most part, if you're getting into the business world, you've got to have money. And certainly if you're going to invest. Okay, what's next, Rod? Any other important points that we want to hit on?
I mean, we talked about the kind of market research and whatnot on the front end. I'm going to add to that just like this educational component to it. And again, some of that comes ahead of time, but it needs to be an ongoing thing. You need to continually be staying up on being innovative, ways that you can reinvent your business because it needs reinventing. If it doesn't, then it falls to the wayside and other things will pass you up. So,
you know what a really good way to incorporate the invest with benefits philosophy is?
Tell me.
Becoming an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth-building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.